Let's see if that. There we go. Hello and welcome to Great Train Layouts Live, where we unmute our microphone. Well, actually, I had unmuted my microphone. I had to change some settings in there. But welcome to Great Train Layouts Live. I'm your host, Nick Ozrak, and tonight we have some good layouts in store for you. We've got not one, but two layouts we're going to be playing with today as a way of exploring some different track plans. There we go. Hello, and now I'm hearing myself. So live where we unmute our microphone. Well, actually, I had unmuted my microphone. I had to change some settings in there. But welcome to Great Train Layouts Live. I'm your host, Nick Ozrak, and now that I've closed out of the one window where I had my chat going, we should be good to go so we don't hear me twice or multiple times. That could get very dizzying very quick. So tonight we're celebrating because Great Train Layouts was featured in the March 2023 issue of Railroad Model Craftsman. And I was approached to feature this layout that we're looking at first, Mountenay, which we'll get to in a moment, because the piece about this digital layout coexists with a piece about the actual layout being built by Robert Mountenay. No, he didn't name his layout after himself. His version is named Barchester. It's a Pennsylvania Railroad layout. I took the track plan and I made it into a Canadian National Branch line. So we are going to be looking at this first, and then probably an hour from now, we're going to take a look at Norfolk and Western in the 1950s. And just to get you excited about what we'll be looking at with that layout, we're going to be seeing if a train layout can capture the spirit of a Winston Link. Not a small task. We'll get into that in a moment, but I've got a little something special for you to get you excited about that coming up later. So I've got a little video cutscene I'd like to share with you. Check it out. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a video that I edited together using some tricks behind the scenes to recreate what it might have been like back in the 1950s when Winston Link took his famous hotshot eastbound photograph. We'll be looking at that layout coming up in the next hour. But first, we're going to be playing with Mountenay. So Mountenay is a roughly 10-foot by 6-foot shelf layout, HO scale, that packs a lot into a little. It was designed by Rob Chant, was initially sort of patterned after the Stewartstown Railroad in southern Pennsylvania. And Robert Mountenay has gone in more of a freelance Pensy Branch version, and we've gone even further by making it Canadian. Here we can have an top-down look at what we're looking at here. So we've got a bunch of different industries to work with. We've got this wonderful Y to play with that's going to give us the ability to run around cars as well as to turn tender locomotives like our power for today. And speaking of locomotives, I should mention that way, our sponsor for today's episode, which is K&L Trains. We're going to be seeing a lot of their steam locomotives in action tonight. They make some really impressive models for all sorts of different railroads and fallen flags. I love playing with their stuff, and so it's nice to be able to feature some of their really nice equipment in the spotlight tonight. So we're going to get to it. We're going to play with this. We're going to see how much entertainment can one shelf layout provide us. And to do that, we've got our trusty power for tonight. Let me know if you need the audio levels adjusted, if it's too loud or too soft. I can play around with that. But this is going to be our power for tonight. This is Well, let's see if anybody in the comments recognizes the significance of this steam locomotive. But it is 060, number 7470. It's an 018A. Is the classification on that. So we've got 4 cars that are coming onto the layout tonight. We've got loaded coal, loaded fuel, a loaded reefer, and a loaded flat car, as well as our passenger car. Passengers are going to be going to the station. We are taking the... We're going to be dropping off the coal and the fuel over here at this trestle and this unloading facility, respectively. We're going to be swapping reefers here, picking up that box car from that elevator, dropping the flat car of bricks off at the freight station, and picking up this gondola, this flat car, and this box car to get out of Dodge. Ethan Vogel, yes, correct. This is the same locomotive that Conway Scenic Railroad owns. Let's have some fun. So we are replicating a mixed train service tonight. I'm going to turn the volume down on my own end of things, I think. But give you a chance to appreciate it as we're coming into town. Here we are coming along the backdrop, approaching the station. Make sure our switch is thrown correctly. And we'll just pause to get a nice screenshot moment as we're pulling in the station here. Right about there. Here we go. So, we're going to give our passengers a moment to disembark. What I love about mixed train layouts, so shelf layout like this, I actually built a shelf layout several years ago replicating the Fonda, Johnstown, and Gloversville Railroad, and it was the end of the line known as Breadalbane, which had mixed train service up through 1967. What's nice about mixed train service is that it gives you another layer of operations without needing to take up a siding or that much space. You come into your scene, which usually with a shelf layout is just a town, with your combine, your passenger car, your caboose. You drop your passengers off, you go about your switching business, you pick them up, and you head out of town. It's a great way of building an additional layer of things. Plus, if you're really not in the mood of doing something complicated switching wise, like we're going to be doing today, then you could just have a passenger service come in, turn around, go out. Heck, if you had RDC models, it would be easy to just bring them in and bring them out. And sometimes, honestly, as talking from somebody who's modeling something kind of small, sometimes it's nice to have an operation that could just take 3 minutes, be really quick. So, let's see what we want to take care of first. So dropping off that flat car of bricks, what I want to figure out is where do I need my cars to be, because I know that hopper and that tank are going to need to be on the front end. This reefer is actually right where I want it to be. So I'm kind of inclined to drop it off, pick these 2 cars up. Yeah, I'm going to need to do some shuffling because I need to get those 2 cars together. They are in the right order, but I want to get that reefer out of the way. Maybe I'll put the reefer in the Y, get those 2 together first. Let's see what we want to do there. But first we're gonna back up a little bit, make sure that coach clears the switch. So, while we're getting underway here, would love to hear from you guys how you're doing, how your modeling's going, especially if any of you have seen the Railroad Model Craftsman article. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I really appreciated the opportunity to spotlight a little bit of train simulation because I am a very strong believer, as you guys know, that train simulation and model railroading go hand in hand. One isn't inherently better than the other. They each have their perks. And so I tried to convey that with what I wrote about in the article. And PK765 fan, you're good. Glad to hear it. Joey the Cat, wasn't there meant to be a version of the Whiz Beach and Upwell route? So the full TRS-19 version is on the download station now. That being the full 6 mile thing. The Tane version, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten around to uploading that yet. So you'll have to hang tight. I'll try to make a point. I have to do a few uploads. So I will try to make a point of doing that within the next couple of days. Nick from Vegas. Just read the article. Currently, I'm working on building my club's layout in 19. Excellent. Hopefully you find value in that because you can learn a lot operations-wise. Even with a big layout. Now, Trains is a single-player experience. But you can definitely learn a good amount, even from a single-player experience. Especially, you'll see with the N&W route. A shelf layout like this, though, no doubt you're looking at a single-player experience. So being able to test out your concept and say, does this satisfy me? Does this give me the operational complexity I'm looking for? Is it too much or too little? You can find the balance here. This plan is an absolute favorite of mine. It is available for download on greattrainlayouts.com. You can download it there. We're going to set that reefer off to the side. I'd be tempted to put it over there. Try to figure out when I want to take those two cars and do that swap. But I think I want to get these two fuel cars together first, and then we'll do the swap-a-rooney of those. Let's see. Ethan, a buddy of mine and I are thinking of doing a what-if version of the Abingdon Branch had it not been converted to a rail trail. That's a good concept to play with. I will say there's a great track plan. We'll see the Abingdon Branch tonight. There's also a great track plan on Appalachian Railroad Modeling.com that focuses on, it's a double-decker HO scale layout of the branch in its entirety. So that might give you some ideas to work off of. I've seen probably 3 or 4 different plans involving the branch in some way. I really like what we're going to play with tonight, and you'll see why. Okay, our fuel cars are out of the way. And now I'm going to pick up these. I don't know if it really matters which order I do them. One of the things I like, too, about doing these layouts in Trainsy is that you can get a sense of the scale. So, in the case of this, I've built a door. So you can kind of get a... This might be lower than you would actually build your layout. But you can... If you place the right objects around it, it gives you a sense of how big it's going to look. So, yeah, obviously we could zoom in and make everything look one-to-one. Because Trainsy is designed to be enjoyed in that way. Oh. Yes, cat. I totally neglected to notice that. Fortunately, there's not much in the way of scenery up there, so I'm not overly concerned about him. I guess we'll leave him be for the moment. So yes, you could go down and enjoy the scenery really close and get angles like you'd never see in real life, like over here. Like you'd have to stick your cell phone in here to get this view. I love these cars too, how they have the air hoses that actually hook up. That's a nice touch. Grain's getting loaded into the boxcar, which it probably should have already, but they're pretty quick about it. We'll go easy on them. Love the animation on the door too. So yeah, 7470. I've never seen this locomotive run. I am dying to see it run. Hopefully sometime this year. But last year, Conway was not giving a lot of advance notice about when they run the engine, so it made it hard to plan trips around that. Maybe this year I'll get lucky. Yes, that's Luca, by the way. And of course, if either of my cats was going to steal the show, it would be Luca. Oh, can I clear that? I can't. I don't have enough room. I forgot that was an element of the puzzle. So we're going to have to put this boxcar back and do a second move. I forgot about that as an element of the challenge of it. Now, if I were switching this with a shorter locomotive, I probably could fit two cars. Goes to show that even when you think about what motive power you choose for running your layout, if you're running big mainline, it probably doesn't matter. But with switching puzzle like this, you could create a challenge by virtue of choosing a larger locomotive. Very tight fit to get out of the industry. Yes. Yeah, and I mean, if you had more space, you could extend that further. But sometimes there's something to be said about giving yourself unnatural challenges, we'll say. Or things where you look at it and practically you could give yourself more room, or you could connect a track that's unconnected. But there's an element of gameplay that you're building in by way of adding that extra step. An example, I was just looking at a plan this morning that involves mine runs with the Chesapeake and Ohio and the Virginian. And there's this interchange yard, and practically speaking, you could connect them very easily. But in real life, there was a switchback that the Virginian had to use to access the C&O yard. And so the layout designer, even though he could have put a switch in there, left it as a stub end, so that the Virginian crew has to do a switchback maneuver to be able to do that. So sometimes you want to give yourself those unnatural challenges. Exactly, Bryson Grondin. Make you use your noggin a little bit. And I find that the layouts that I like best are ones that have the ability to oscillate between those 2 points. Because sometimes you want that ultimate challenge. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want to just let your train run around in circles, whether it be because you've had a long day at the office or because you're showcasing it off to guests. Other times you really want to dig in there and spend an hour drilling out a yard. And that's okay. Something that gives you that flexibility is worthwhile. All right, now we're picking up this boxcar, and then we're going to take that reefer over. I'm hoping at some point I'll actually have proper fascia on that thing in the not-too-distant future. The track's down on top, but I need to get it ballasted and weathered. So for those who don't know, I'm modeling the Greenfield Village, the Weiser Railroad at the Greenfield Village at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. AKA, I get a prototypical reason to say that I am modeling a loop of track. But there's a bit of switching. There's an engine shed. There's a siding for car storage, and a cassette for the museum interior. I was really happy when I came up with that idea for using the cassette as an interior. Your layout, your rules. You got it. Yes, so and PK, yes, that's what I'm building. And so right now my layout is admittedly operations wise on the easier side. Like, yeah, you could make it complicated, but where I'm my feeling right now in life is I want an easy layout. I want something that I could just watch my train go around in circles. If I want something more involved, I fire up the sim. All right, so I've got these two cars. I kind of want them out of the way because, well, actually, no, I do want to run around them. I want to run around the boxcar, and yeah, so I'm going to want to run around all of these cars. The only other question, if I'm really thinking efficiently, is okay, I'm going to need to. This car is going to be on the right side for me. This car needs to be run around. So I think I want to grab that flat car next, just so that I only have to do one run around loop around all of these cars. Although I could put the flat. Yeah, let's. I know what I want to do with the flat car. We'll wait on the flat car. Oh, yeah, and we're going to push all that back to our train. And then we're going to push our train back into the... Oh, we're going to need to run around that car, too, come to think of it. So, how do I want to do that? I think we're going to clear the... Oh, and the combine. Combine's also kind of in the wrong spot, but I could drill that later. This is where you get into the switching puzzle element. Because there's no doubt there's a million ways you could switch this, but the question is, what's the most efficient way with all these cars? I kind of want to have things put together. So I'm going to put the combine to the side for the moment. And then that way I can grab the box car, the flat car. Then all of that's together. I like that. White Star, good to see you, man. What would you think of a train's version of the SP San Ramon Valley Branch? Well, I don't know anything about the San Ramon Valley Branch. I don't really have an opinion on that. One way or another. I trust that if you're interested in it, then there's likely a very good reason to model it. I just don't know what that is. NW611J, looking forward to seeing the NW themed layout. My dream is to build a layout themed in the 50s when steam was king. Well, hopefully this layout's going to give you some ideas, because there's a lot going on with this layout. It's a big layout, hence why we're playing with this for about an hour, and then we're giving 2 hours to the NW layout. Okay, this is a furniture factory. We're picking up a loaded boxcar from here. And we're getting close to the point where we'll run out of room to run around all of our cars at once, so... And the question being, here's another element of difficulty. Do you block your crossings, or do you leave them accessible? Because right now, with all the cars we have, our crossings are going to be blocked. Which is okay if we do the run around right away. But I wouldn't want to leave them parked there. Hello, John. Good to see you again. Just joining in. Well, you've joined in at a good time. And... yeah, since we've got everything together, I feel like we're going to have to deal with that now. But we'll come back for that car in just a moment. That reefer that I left on the Y. We could come back for that because I have to shove those two, the coal and the tanker, into the fuel track anyway. This is Mountenay that we are operating tonight. It is available at greattrainlayoutslive.com, where you can download all of the layouts that we feature on the stream are there or will eventually be there for download. And if you are interested in having me take a look at your track plan and perhaps mock it up in the train sim environment so you have the chance to play test it before you build it, feel free to reach out to me. My contact info is at greattrainlayouts.com as well. And there's a link in the description of the live stream you can check out. Okay, well, we'll keep this crossing clear while we're blocking that crossing. And now we're going to run around the entirety of this. And we're going to get rid of some of these cars that are in the way. Bryson, lots of Easter eggs and references in the NW layout. Yes. Yes. And kudos to its designer, Gary Hoover. True genius on that front. So another thing I've done on this layout here is I've installed a little refueling terminal. So operationally, rather than beginning and staging, you could begin the day by having your power staged here, running off, and then coming back in. Another way of varying your operations. What are we going to do with the gondola? We're going to grab the gondola after we've toward the end of things, because it's actually, we don't need to run around it. Let's get a cab side view from this locomotive. All right, good to pull ahead. Now I need a little bit more visibility, so I'm going to switch my vantage point to the front of the locomotive. This is a nice view. Nice cinematic view. Now we get to ride the step boards as we make our hook. Perfect. Okay, so now we have all of these cars where we want them in relation to where they ultimately need to go. The only one that isn't is this flat car, and we're going to be coming back for that in a little bit. Let's see. So these are going to be coming with us. Those are going to be going over to the fuel track, but I want to get rid of that car of bricks. Let us start, first and foremost, with getting... We're going to put these cars off to the side. That way I can dump these and then switch the order of cars so that I could get the brick cars into the siding. This is our freight station over here. Again, being able to enjoy one of those cell phone views, I'll call them. Any of you guys building shelf layouts? Be curious to know how big, operations-wise, what you're thinking, scale, all that good stuff. Era. Okay, that gets these cars out of the way. And now, for the fuel cars. Make sure I throw the switch, which I did. So this coal loaded hopper gets spotted at the trestle, then spotting the car for unloading at the fuel unloader. John Overman, not a shelf layout, but I recently started building my first layout. Oh, very good. What are you constructing right now? Two by four end layout. You could do a lot in a 2x4 space within. Got our hopper spotted. Now we're gonna spot the tank car just a little further back. And we'll uncouple that. Okay. So now we'll leave the flat car in this area. And switch it out. Flat car in this area, grab the box car and the reefer. Put the flat car in their place. And then... Actually... Here's a thought. They're going to need to go on the other side of that combine anyway. So... Oh. Didn't mean to press the map button. Maybe we'll grab them now and put them in the middle of the combine. Oh, but then they'll be mean and leave the street clogged. We'll just grab them now. Joey the Cat, what's my favorite K&L engine? This one ranks pretty heavily. Tough one. They made a G3 Pacific that's a kit bash, aka Canadian Pacific 2317. It's my favorite engine or locomotive, so I'm hard. But as far as model, their Reading and Northern 425 is really nice. I've also grown fond of the X10A. I might show that off to you in a little bit. That's a commuter Canadian National engine. We'll see how quickly I get the switching done, if I give myself enough time to play with a passenger commuter train or not. Glad that your layout's taking shape, John. Might also zoom out a little bit more. We could have a wider view of it. Another thing I love about Train Z, being able to zoom in and get that nice telephoto look. Or zoom out and get a wider field of view. Okay, so now those cars are going to go... We want to put them on the other side of the coach. We also want to grab the gondola and the flat car. So, yeah. Things and thoughts. Well, something else that I am excited about to share with you guys. Not really related to model railroading per se, but another opportunity to be able to get to play with trains, you could say, is this past weekend I had the pleasure of participating in the volunteer training program at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. And so I have begun my journey to become a qualified motorman of streetcars and trolleys, interurbans. It was super fun. I got to operate 7 cars over the course of 2 days. And yes, those of you who know me say, Nick, you're in Central Virginia. You went all the way up to southwestern PA. Yes, I went all the way up to southwestern PA. So it's my first opportunity to really get in on the operations side with the group. They were super friendly, super helpful. Uh, it's very interesting to compare the experience of running those cars versus, well, train simulators. I could definitely see doing, if I can figure out what the right pieces of equipment would be, to do like a side by side of here's operating a PCC in a train sim versus here's operating a PCC in real life. That could be kind of fun. Okay, so now we've got these three cars that need to come with us. We've got this combine over here, or combine. Passenger car with this coach. I think I'm going to stick these cars over here on this track. Or actually, no, I could stick the passenger car over here and then bring the box cars back. I like that. Ethan Vogel, Virginia has very little in terms of ops, as far as I know. Hampton Roads here. Yeah, that's been my experience. I'm not sure if there are really. I mean, so Virginia Museum of Transportation works with the Roanoke chapter of the NRHS. That's volunteer based, but outside of that, I mean, not a ton of tourist railroad operations in Virginia to begin with, let alone ones that you could actually volunteer with. So yeah, sometimes you do have to travel a fair bit to go to the places you really want to go. Another place I got to travel to recently, an old favorite of ours, the East Broad Top. I had the fun of attending the Winter Spectacular. And that, you're going to be able to see the fun and adventures that I got up to on the Heist YouTube channel for that, because I helped him I filmed some content with him for that. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, you'll see some of that coming out. So my thinking right now, I've got this coach. I'm going to dump it over here. I've got these three boxcars, well, two boxcars and reefer that I want to put between the coach and the engine where they're at right now. I've got to pick up. This car is perfectly set for where I want to go. If I'm being really careful about my blocking, I would make sure to put it behind the loaded cars. So I'm going to try to do that, because yay for having some degree of challenge. Then the flat car, we're going to have to run around so as to put it on the right side of the locomotive. I'm pretty sure I know what I want to do for that. Okay. So next up, those box cars. I'm gonna we'll bring them across the road, get them out of the way. We'll leave the combine where it's at, or the passenger car. Man, my mixed train daily speak is coming through. We're gonna leave the passenger car where it's at so that I can rearrange the order on these freight cars in a little bit. But I want to get these out of the way. Do I want to shove them across the street? Maybe. Yeah, if I shove them across the street, it probably saves me a move, so I'll do that. Brayson. Yeah, I noticed Mickley was the editor for a few of Heist's recent videos. Figured you must have been busy. Yes. Yes, been busy with a lot of things. This is already proving to be a really good year for Streamliner Media, which is my day job. So I'm really happy about. I'm happy about a lot of things. Happy about a lot of things. Had a really good meeting today too, which hopefully someday you'll get to see the results of that. Frame rate 24. Nick's editing the Railroad's online content. Nick's been doing the larger audience stuff. Yeah. That's kind of the breakdown of it. In a nutshell. Alrighty. This is one of my favorite parts of the layout here. Just these tight kind of switchback areas we've got here. Once again, a shout out to K&L Trains. The detail on that locomotive is phenomenal. All right, do we want to grab the flat car now? Nah, we'll wait until we pick up the empty gondola here. Imagine living in this house. This would be your view. We'll hop the fence or just walk through it. Oh, switch to map twice. And now we're going to pull back. This time we'll ride along with it, kind of, sort of. Cullen. Oh, good to see you, Cullen. As someone who has worked on 7470, K&L did a fantastic job with that model. They really did. They really did. I really would like to have an HO scale version of this. And the only option is brass. So someday I will, but until that day, this is a really nice substitute. The detail on this is so sharp. Gaz3801, very good eyes. Yes, this is in fact Barchester. Which at the time Robert Mountenay hadn't named it Barchester, so I named it Mountenay because it sounded kind of Quebecois, like from Quebec. So it seemed like a fitting name, like a town name, Mountenay, Quebec. That sounds like a thing. Okay, we've got our flat car. Joey the Cat, imagine if K&L made a big boy. You don't have to, in the sense that Trains Forge, trained with a Z hyphen Forge, already have a big boy model. It's a freeware model. It's a pretty good model. So, big boy, I don't know that that's what that Steve would do, because Steve tends to focus solely on models that nobody else has done previously. Yeah, Bryson, brass is a huge investment. And you know, if you were building a layout where you're only going to really want that one engine, and that one engine exists in brass, then maybe there's good reason to. Or if you have a lot of money. Barring those reasons, yeah, one has to be selective. Okay, so this... Actually, this gondola I could just pop right over there, which is convenient. And then the flat car. You're going to see what we're going to do with the flat car. We're going to get creative with the flat car. I forgot to throw that switch. Yeah, Trains Forge big boy is nice. But yeah, Rob Chant, who designed this track plan, did such a nice... It's such a creative plan, because you think, oh, how much switching can you fit into a single shelf layout that's 10 by 6? The answer is a lot. I mean, I kind of went easy on myself too, because there's ways you could make this even more of a time investment. So if you needed to, I mean, for example, if there was a car that you needed to fish out from here, but a car over here needed to remain spotted, then you'd have to do extra moves to replace the car. You know, running tender engine as opposed to running tank engine or diesel. there's I mean, if you wanted to really go nuts and replace every single car, have a big train coming in, a big train leaving, yeah, it packs a lot into a little. All right, dropping off the gondola next to Combine here because that is one of the lighter cars we're going to be taking back with us. Yep, I can now see how the rest of the moves are going to happen in my head, and I like what I see. It's always a good day when you like what you see in your head. Gaz3801. Rob's plans are fantastic. His Facebook group is excellent for anyone looking for a small to large track plan. Yes, Journal of Model Railroad Design, or JOMRD. You can Google search that and find his website, the Facebook group as well. I highly recommend it. Rob is a true genius when it comes to track plan design. Needless to say, we will be seeing more of his work on the show because I just love. I've actually built at least one other layout based on a design that he made, which is also Canadian themed. Is it obvious that I have an affinity for Canada? I am dual citizen, true story. And my dad, who got me into trains growing up, if it was Canadian, it was notable. And it doesn't matter how many railroads I've come to get to know since then, that idea that, oh, it's Canadian, it's special, has stuck with me. Oh, bugger, I'm following that switch. No, I definitely need to clear that. Virtual Railroad Academy. All I see is trains in my head. Well, yeah. That's a good thing to be seeing in your head, mind you. I mean, I've honestly... I've had dreams about train chasing... train chasing dreams are the most frequent. But some involving going to club layouts. Do I have a problem? Maybe. But I'm not necessarily interested in a cure. But I am interested in having a good time with you guys. Gaz, you're modeling North American HO despite living in Australia. Kudos to you, man. Oh, if I put those cars there, I'm not going to have enough room for that. I got a little bit too clever. That's... Well, we'll make that work. Because I still want to do my funky turnaround thing, even if it's not the most advanced. Oh, and I set that switch the wrong way. I am all about setting those switches the wrong way. I'm also going to run out of track-ish. I think that's enough room. Okay. Hi, Odin. Glad you could join us. Oh, Joey. Tornado watches. Not as fun to have tornado watches in your head. Oh, Bryson, you appreciate the proper pronunciation of Quebec. You're welcome. I'm going to have to cheat that switch because, for the record, I cleared that switch. So this is not cheating. I mean, depending on how you define cheating. Sometimes you have to set the trigger radius different too. So I'm going to try moving that, and then I go to here and I set the radius for 0. I thought I'd already set these, but now let's go back. Now I can throw that switch. There we are. Now we're going to do a funky runaround move, which is going to block the crossing, but I couldn't resist. Proving the concept of being able to do to multitask, we're going to run around 2 cars while turning our locomotive around using this Y. That's good to put. Actually, I don't want to run around that boxcar. Okay, this is where I got too clever for my own good. Because, yes, the flat car needs to be run around. But I also need to access that boxcar. And, of course, I can't put the boxcar where I need to because I have these 3 cars blocking the way. See, it's very easy to get confused with this kind of thing. Okay. So, to fix all of this, I'm going to need to turn around. But I don't want to turn that reefer around. Oh, lordy. So, I have a plan B. No, I can't fit that in there with that. I still might have a plan B. It's a question of whether or not I can fit that flat car in with the reefer. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about the 7456 in Michigan. Hopefully that sees a promising future someday. Because I've heard good things about 7470 as a locomotive, as far as how well it performs. Get that UI out of the way for y'all. Yeah, not quite technically enough room. We'll do a thing. But goes to show you how this is how complex we're getting just by working a 10x6 switching layout. Sorry, hun. I'm gonna be late driving home because there's a crazy train blocking all the crossings and he's playing 52 pickup in the Y. Yeah, that's pretty spot on there, frame rate. Frame rate. Can I run around that way? But I don't want to run around that boxcar. Okay, I know what I'm doing. I finally know what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen. I do believe I finally know what I'm doing. He says, hopefully. Okay. All right. Got that out of the way. Did I switch myself into a corner a bit, Casey? Yes. Sad to say. What I should have done is just kept those boxcars on the other side, so I wasn't pushing them over here. That's where I goofed up. Oh, and I also goofed up because I need to put that flat car on the Y so I can run around it. But we'll finally get to see this Y in action. Because, say it with me, why not? I really should have a sound effect for that. So yes, sorry to... I could kind of keep that crossing open while being able to run around it. Close enough. I am also switching in a corner. I've switched myself into it and in it. We are nearing the end, though. Kind of, sort of. So once I run around this flat car, I'm going to pick up this car. These cars will be all oriented correctly. I'm probably just going to reassemble the train over here. Then I'll move the boxcar over to where it needs to go. That seems about right to me. Because I have to get those cars out of the way somehow. But then I'm finally done with running around equipment. That'll be nice. Oh, that's a screenshot moment right there. I love that view. And hopefully something that's kind of come across as we've been running this layout is that there are so many different vantage points to be able to actually appreciate the design. So obviously if you cheat, physics-wise, if you put the camera where you can't in real life, then yeah, you're getting additional views. But even if you're just taking it in from the person perspective, there's still a lot you can see. Okay, we've got our locomotive turnaround. We've got this car on the right side, although it needs to go out of the way. Or does it? No, it doesn't. We'll leave it where it's at. Gonna pick up the flat car. Gonna pick up the box cars. Gonna have to switch the order that they're in. I might leave the flat car where it's at. I'm gonna block this train horribly, but it'll save me a few minutes, and I really want to make sure you guys have a good amount of time with the N&W layout. So we'll just leave the flat car where it is. So we'll get those together, put the train together, run around on this track, take the... this makes me think of Lionel Traintown, where you might have where you need to get the car is only one track away, yet you need to do this whole circuitous loop around the world to get to where you actually need to drop off the cars. Okay, now we are actually getting somewhere. Now I actually know that I'm seeing what I need to see and do in my head, and that's nice. Get my switches lined properly so I don't find myself plowing into the engine shed or something like that. So, can you do a better job of switching this layout than me? Only way you'll know is if you download the layout at greattrainlayouts.com. This is Mountenay that we're playing tonight. You can download it for free. For Trains 19, should also work fine in Trains 22. Pick up KNL 018A from kltrainswithaz.com. And see if you could do a better job than me, because I bet you probably can. Yeah, that is... Well, we have not had a fender bender tonight. We are doing good on that front. And there will be no fender benders, because we got this. Now, looks like we're going to block the crossing. If we stop the train here. So in the interest of making sure that Mr. Framerate 24 gets home to his partner, we will we'll block the combine at the station so people can start loading. We'll block the freight cars in between the two crossings. And then we'll take the reefer over to the grocery distributor. And then we'll come back to the train, and then we'll take off. Yay! We are getting there, folks. We are, in fact, getting there. And now, squeezing these cars between the two crossings. All sorts of ways you could add operational interest. I saw a layout featured in Model Railroader that, and I thought this was really creative. On the fascia here, they had locks for the switches. So if you were going to throw a turnout on the layout, you had to unlock the switch first and lock it just like you would in real life. And also they had faucet handles or spigot handles like you would have on a garden hose to set handbrakes. I thought that was brilliant. So for example, if you were setting a car off at the furniture factory here, or you've got the furniture factory and you've got the scrap dealer, so you'd have two handles on your fascia to be able to set and release your handbrakes. I saw that. I thought that is brilliant. If I did an area in which I'm setting off single cars, great way of adding operational interest. Okay, now we are going the distance. We are going all the way back to where we were. Our switches are set correctly because I don't need more surprises with with this particular operation. Gonna drop off that at Gibbard Brothers, get our train back together, and get out of town. And it only took us about an hour. Not too bad. The sounds that he uses on his locomotives are phenomenal as well, especially the whistles. Okay. Time to get into position here. Make sure we don't run out of track. And now we can set that reefer off. The padlock system can be seen on SoCal Scale Models YouTube channel. I think it's a great way of, especially for a layout like this, or smaller, where you might want to find ways of being able to have more of a visceral experience and extend your operating sessions. Great way of adding layers. Okay, setting off the reefer for Gibbard Brothers. Odin, Steve just does good work in general. Wish I could be at the show. Him and Approach Medium will be there this weekend. Yes, thank you for reminding me, Odin. I should totally point that out. So, at the Greenberg Train Show in Edison, New Jersey on March 10th and 11th, not this weekend, depending on when you're watching this, of course, but the following weekend of 2023, K&L Trains and Approach Medium will be in person at the train show, and they will have a booth and apparently some goodies to toss out. So you should definitely check out their booth if you're in the New Jersey area. I love those Greenberg train shows. I used to go to the one near Pittsburgh when I lived closer. Did I hear Alco? Alco? Alco, buddy. I also have a cat named Alco, in case you were unaware. I'm not calling for a random Alco to appear out of the blue. Okay, so now that we've had all of that fun, let's get out of town. Is K&L working on any new locomotives? Yes, speaking of Canadian National, they are working on... Oh, I forget the letter designation, but 6060, the Bullet Nose Bettys. That is their current project, to my understanding. And that, and I think they're working on the Pennsylvania Railroad L1s. There's some photos of that, or screenshots that they posted to Facebook recently. Odin, yes, their booth will be right at the entrance and across from Steve's dad's train painting booth. Wouldn't that be something to bring all the Laros together, where you'd have a photo charter, a train sim running, and a painting being made of the same subject? That would be particularly fun. Maybe they've done that already. I'm not sure. Hi, Luca. Here's a close-up of Luca. Okay. Now, if only we could get a breeze generator for our models to be able to have trees blowing in the breeze like they do in the sim, eh? So first we're going to pick up our cars, and then we're going to pick up our coach. And then we're going to get underway. And all in the space of about a little over an hour. So you can see, just because you might be limited to a small space doesn't mean that your plan can't encapsulate a lot of operation. You could do a lot in a little. Bryson Grondin. They call it a fan nick. Yeah, yeah, but the wind dynamics, the wind physics don't scale with the models. Plus, who knows if our glue would hold, and then you have trees and dust everywhere. That could be kind of messy. All right. And there you have it. 4 cars brought in, 5 cars departing. We did it. On Mountenay, a 10 by 6 foot HO scale layout. Evening, Harley. Glad you could join us. This layout available for download at greattrainlayouts.com or on the download station. But I encourage you to check it out and have fun with it. I've seen people change the scale of it. This is something you could change the scale of it to N or HON3, and it would still be very interesting. I've seen somebody do more of a Western take with the scenery. Lot of directions you could go with this plan. Here's a top-down view before we switch layouts. So you can see we've got our main, our passage siding, and let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want to count dropping off coal. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spots for cars. A lot and a little. So up next, we are going to be checking out Norfolk and Western in the 50s in just a moment. We will be right back. and welcome back to Great Train Layouts Live. I am pleased to present to you our second layout for tonight that we're playing with, and that is Norfolk and Western in the 50s. This is an HO scale, golly, I think it's something like 40 feet by 20 feet basement layout created by Gary Hoover as featured in Model Railroader April 2020, I want to say was the issue. This was love at first sight for me. I saw the magazine article about it. I thought the layout was awesome. I thought I needed to build it, and it took me about 2 months, and I completed it. This is already available on the download station for Trains a New Era, but I've made some improvements specific to TRS-19, and if you want those improvements, go over to patreon.com/the roundhouse. Frequently, these builds that I complete on the live stream are available for early access over there, and this one is no exception. This route will be going live tomorrow. So if you go to patreon.com/the roundhouse for as little as $1 a month, you're helping to support my creative endeavors, including this, and you'll get early access to trains layouts. So, this layout, let us talk about what is going on with this layout. This layout is very big and has a lot of things going on. So let us maybe start with just taking a freight train for like a through freight train down the line, and we could kind of break it down into segments because I'll give a brief overview, but then we'll get to see this up close. So if we look at the layout from the sky, the one thing I have to give a caveat to, this area over here is the mining branch. Now, and for the actual layout, this was on top of here, so the track would disappear not into a tunnel, but would disappear behind the mountains here. It would climb a grade, and then around this tunnel, the second layer of the layout would be on top. So this would be on top of that. And this is a mining branch. So the goal is to be able to switch your cars out. I don't know why those are empty. You might have to load them up. But that is the only kind of major design change I've made. That and just the fact that the staging yard would be underneath the layout here as opposed to the side. But that's a trains with a Z limitation. Yes, the NKP fan, this layout. So if you want it sooner rather than later, you get it from Great Train, or you get it from Patreon. But probably in a month, this will also be available publicly. So let's break down what we have going on here, because it is a lot, and we'll do our first train. As you can see, I've got a staging yard full of equipment, so we could have some fun for the next little while. But what do we have going on here? So Gary Hoover's inspiration for this layout was photography of Winston Link. I'm sure we're all familiar with Winston Link and his absolutely impressive body of work on the Norfolk and Western Railway from 1955 to 1960. There's actually a museum dedicated to him with his original equipment and many of his prints and negatives. Not too far from where I live, down the road in Roanoke. So Gary was inspired by that. So there's specific locations that are recreated, but the geography is kind of a mixture of things. The real goal is to capture the essence of the NNW, especially in the late fall, which is what we have the season set to. So the geography is kind of a mixture of things, but you'll see some very recognizable scenes, and we'll explore that. So over here we have representation of Norfolk Passenger Terminal. Then the bridges, the bascule bridges coming out over, I want to say Elizabeth? Forget the name of the body of water. But when you look at it like this, maybe this seems kind of familiar to you with the tugboat in the dry dock. Maybe that's a familiar scene. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Say no more. Over here we have, this is representative of, golly, what's the name of this yard? Lambert's Point. Thank you, me from the past. This is Lambert's Point. So we've got the roundhouse over here, uh, and Lambert's Point as a yard. So we don't see the actual coal unloading side of the N&W from this, but we do have Lambert's Point yard. This is Forest Junction here. Bridge 425. Those cows might look somewhat familiar if you're a fan of Link and his photography. Then we go through the tunnel, and what do we have here? I do wonder, might this be the drive-in movie theater at Jaeger, aka where Hot Shot Eastbound was taken? Yes, that is correct. That is what we have. Ron Paladin, we need an episode of this in black and white. Yeah, yeah. Honestly, if you missed the beginning of the live stream, I showed you a video, kind of recreating what it might have been like to be at that drive-in theater on that very night. And you can actually see the couple right here. This is the wrong kind of car. The game doesn't have Link's Buick that he used for the photograph. Going down the way, now we're in Jaeger, so this is Auville Yard, which on this layout serves as a junction between the main line and the mine branch, which goes through that tunnel. Then which junction is this supposed to represent? This would be the junction right outside of Jaeger. Then we have Abingdon. Yes, as in that Abingdon. We'll come back to that thought in just a moment. So, continuing down the main line, then go through this tunnel. This is what is this point? Oh, this is Bass. This is the N&W had a branch line over the Virginian, which is noted for its electrics. And the Virginian on his layout was a full loop, so there's actually a full circle of track, so you could have a train looping underneath you if you so wanted. Coming around the corner, this is Blue Ridge. So we have the limestone quarry over here, serviced by its own private railway with a shay, and Blue Ridge Depot over here. Now going through this tunnel, so this was the cover of April of 2020, was this angle right about here, and boy, that one of my favorite covers of Model Railroader for sure. Back through the tunnel, we are back in Abingdon. So this track to the side would take us off to staging. And we have a couple of local industries we could serve. And then my favorite part of this layout, the Abingdon Branch. So we have, golly, this is not Cartwright. That's a Clear Creek Junction. This is Clear Creek Junction. Number of photos that Link took of the Virginia Creeper as it was refilling with water here. And then I'm not going to go to the exact angle. We'll save that for when we actually run the branch. But this is Green Cove. This station actually still survives. It's part of the national park. The Abingdon Branch no longer being in existence, but a lot of it is now a rail trail. Coming around the bend on this side, we've got Nella, which featured in some of Link's photos. And then we've got West Jefferson, North Carolina, the end of the Creeper in its later years. It used to run further into North Carolina. We've got a Y that can be removed in and out for turning the locomotive around and sending it back. Fun fact, this backdrop is actually my backyard in Virginia. Thought it was nice and atmospheric. I got it on a misty day. Felt good for the atmosphere. So I did mention, so changing seasons. So the layout as built is modeled in the late fall, early winter, when leaves are off the trees, but not much in the way of snow. However, another benefit to train simming is if you want to experiment with different seasons, not all assets for trains ER seasonal. But when I rebuilt this route for trains 19, I made sure that they were so that you could run in different times of year. So if we go to edit environment, then you could see where. So here we are in December, but let's move it into June. Let's have a nice summer day, and now all those trees are going to get leaves on them, and you could appreciate what it would look like if you fully forested your layout, or fully gave it full foliage, shall we say. Now we're going to go into fall and get some nice colors on the trees. You can watch fall happen in the blink of an eye before us. And we go back into January, and now the leaves have fallen off. But what about snow? What would it look like if the layout was covered in snow? Let's find out, shall we? And there you have it. Great way of being able to experiment with different seasons. Little tricky because, again, not all ground textures and trees are seasonal. I had to spend a lot of time learning which were to make this work, but it just felt like something I wanted to do for this. So hopefully when you're playing this, it adds to the replay value. Because obviously if you're building a layout, you kind of have to commit to one season unless you... I've seen some layouts where they'll have different sections of the layout in different seasons. So that's one way to get the best of both or multiple worlds. Okay, we're going to go back to what we initially chose. So let's start off with just a nice run around on the main line, shall we? So to do that, we are going to take charge of a nice K&L Trains, thank you, K&L Trains, A-Class, aka what 1218 is, although our number today is 1244. Make sure our switches are set coming out of staging correctly. There we go. MBX Pictures, thank you so much for the compliment. I'd love to have this for the show computer, provided I have all the assets needed. Oh, well, you should be able to. I try really hard to make sure that all of the assets are available on the download station. If they're not, let me know if you're having issues. Where did I find the Y class? So the Y class is actually a default, or not a default. It was default in Trains 12, but you can download it from the download station. It's a freeware model. Time depending, we'll run one of those maybe for the mine run or loaded coal drag. We'll see what we get to tonight. So again, the staging would be underneath this section of the layout, and then it would reappear right about where it does here and goes behind the roundhouse. So I'm going to fast forward this part because nothing's happening right now. Okay, and now our train's emerging. And I'm going to make sure I've got all my switches set coming into here. I'm going to make sure that I'm set to cross over at Forest, which I am, which is great. Going to watch the Bascule Bridge lower for us. Now, if you weren't getting Train Town vibes before, now you're definitely... I hope this is a nostalgia trip to be able to appreciate Train Town and its Bascule bridges. So I've talked about this route in the past tense. Why? Well, sadly, Gary moved. So he tore this whole thing down. He is planning to build a new N&W layout. Last I spoke with him, and credit to him. I fell madly in love with this layout. This is the kind of layout that I would have moved houses to have this layout. It is such a beautiful work of art. You can pick it up. I think there's maybe a couple videos of it on YouTube. But you could also pick up a copy of April 2020 Model Railroad off of eBay or something. Oh, I'm totally doing the wrong view for this. Let's appreciate it from the seaport side. So when I fell in love with it, I found a way to reach Gary and say, look, can you please send me whatever photos you can to help to fill in the gaps between what we didn't see in the model railroad article. And man, credit where credit is due. He took photos of every inch of his layout so I could get the senior accurate. And here we go, crossing bridge 425. Oh yeah, we don't have a rubber duck for the Bascule Bridge. But yeah, I really appreciated Gary being so willing to have this random stranger reach out and be like, I'm obsessed with your layout now. Can you please take photos of it so I can build it in a sim? He thought it was the coolest thing, and I appreciate that. I yes, no, keeps wanting to snap me back to the wrong place, but I want to make sure you guys get this view, of course. This is the view. Not that low. Let me reposition here so you get the proper view. Okay, there we go. And I love the pause button in Trainsy. It is such a great utility. Here we are. Hotshot eastbound. And here we are coming up on our grade crossing. Gotta love those Norfolk and Western signals as well. And now appreciate it from the wider view of things. Passing through Abingdon. Glad you guys like this layout. It's one that, you know, I there was no way I was going to live stream this, but that was also way before I was doing any of the live streaming stuff. At someday, like, I kept thinking, oh, I want to play with this. I want to play with this and show this to you guys. And I was going to do a full what makes this layout great on it and never got around to it. So this seemed like a good opportunity to show it to you guys. And now crossing over the Virginian. And now crossing over to the other side. So we can appreciate going through Blue Ridge. We'll appreciate this one from a more ordinary view. I love the Norfolk and Western hooter. Okay, now I want to make sure that I am set for staging, and I am. So we're going to go back into staging with this train. I'm actually going to pause. I'm going to, just so that we could start to keep the show moving along, I'm going to have my AI guy drive this for us. So we're going to give him directions. So there's actually a track marker for staging 2E is what we're looking for. No, staging 3, because we want him to come on track 3. So we click this arrow here, and we're going to say drive to track mark and staging 3E. And now he's going to take care of driving from here. So what do you guys want to see first? Do you want to go down the Abingdon Branch? Do you want... So here's your choices. Abingdon Branch, Mine Run, coal drag, or passenger run. Type your responses, and I'll pick based on what I see the most of. Uh, we should have time for probably at least 3 of those things tonight. While I'm waiting to hear back from you, let's talk about this plan as a plan. Let's talk about what I do and don't like. So, as far as does it work to capture all these Winston Link scenes? Yes, I think it does. Now, I don't mean to congratulate myself as far as, oh, look at the scenery that I did. I'm saying that from a standpoint of having these different vignettes. So having the tugboat here for the bascule bridges and having Bridge 425. So you could you could tell that that was a key element of getting these scenes, and I think that Gary's plan absolutely captures all these slices of life as far as being able to capture the feel of that time. I love the fact that we do get a full roundhouse scene with the Lambert's Point roundhouse. Because, yeah, it's Lambert's Point, but it could just as easily be Schaefer's Crossing or somewhere else. Being able to have... so if we do the passenger run... Oh, I forgot that I'd staged that little guy there. Look familiar? I gave him an N&W tender so we could have an N&W switcher. So actually, another option if you really want, I know we just ran him, so you're probably not going to take it, but we could also run a freight transfer between Lambert's Point. These cars go over to the freight station and the industries on this side here. So there's a lot of different, I mean, basically every kind of operation under the sun, this layout gets in some way. You've got local freights, express freight, mine runs, passenger, local passenger, branch line passenger. I mean, this layout, like, yes, that is an advantage of size, but not every layout of this size would be able to get that diversity of traffic and that diversity of power. And here's what's crucial from my way of thinking, is that this is a layout that, despite the fact that it is gigantic, let me make sure we're coming in on the right track. We are. I think it works as a single player layout. So yes, could you run this as a multiplayer? You know, it's speaking as a physical layout, not the Train Z version. Could you have an operating session and run 3 or 4 trains at a time? Yes, easily. But it's a type of layout where I don't think you run it and you feel like you're alone on the line. Even in the double track territory, it lends itself well. Let's see what we've got. Okay, man, I should have had a tally because y'all have some different opinions on this. Yeah, Mike, I see your comments about the yards, and we're going to talk about some of the shortcomings of it as a plan, much as I love it. Okay, passenger, Abingdon, coal, Abingdon, passenger, Abingdon, 2 for coal, 3 for coal. Abingdon. Okay, I've seen it for Abingdon. So we're going to do Abingdon first, and then we'll haul some coal. So let's get the creeper underway, shall we? And I think all the switches are... Oh, not that last one, so... I'm kind of glad you guys chose this one. As I say, this is my favorite part of the layout. We've got good old 380. Oh, I forgot to put 382 spark arrestor on. Hang on. Gotta give it the full spark arrestor pilot. There we go. Now, it looks like... Oh, whoops. Canceled that for some reason. Okay. Spark arrestor. Check. Now it looks like 382. Okay. This is also a K&L Trains model. I originally got it because... Yay, Strasburg Railroad. This is the same locomotive as 475 on the Strasburg Railroad. But obviously, very much at home here. So while we are waiting for that to come through staging, and I'll probably fast forward it. What do I mean by fast forward? I mean doing that. But let's talk in Abingdon. So another thing that I think is worth considering when you're looking at track plans and you're thinking about what do you want to do, it's very easy to look at a big track plan and say, I'm not going to have room for that. There's no way I could do that layout. I don't have a 40-foot long basement. And I hear you. And most of us don't. So that's not all the value there is. You can look at plans and say, is there something from this that I could extract that could potentially be its own layout? Maybe it's a yard, maybe it's a town. But that's something that's worth considering when you're looking at track plans. Because you may see a basement empire where you can't hope to do the whole thing, but maybe there's one little piece of it that you'd like. And in this plan, both the Abingdon branch and the mine branch are really good candidates for their own layout and for their own operations. And specific to the Abingdon, I'm pretty sure this is a 4x8 space. It's not that big. So, yes, you'd want a little bit of extension for your staging and so forth, but you've got the Abingdon in a 4x8. I mean, if you really wanted to make it a full loop and just curve that track around because you'd rather run in circles than do full ops or put a Y, do both, you can. And I love that about this plan. I love that there's that flexibility. So always, when you're looking at these big plans, consider, is there something from this that I could take that's useful, even if I'm doing a super small layout? The shortcomings for this, right, isn't the right word for this layout. It's magnificent. It's only physical limitation making it an even larger layout, which gets into the too big for any single man to build. Yeah, that is true. And it's also more about what you would want to run, because as much as I do love this layout and I come back to it from time to time, when I built this, I had this idea that I should actually stop for my passengers in Abingdon. Oops, I kind of forgot about that. We'll rewind for that part. So when I built this layout, I kind of had this thought in my mind that I was going to play with it all the time. When I started this layout, it was my third trains layout, and I wasn't thinking that I was going to get hooked to the concept of building layouts in Trains E. I thought that I was just going to build what I wanted and what I was going to play with. It kind of dawned on me after a while that maybe I actually really like building these things, and that's the fun of it for me in part. But that hadn't crossed my mind yet. But since building it, I've there's things that now that I've built it, I realize that I do like running about it, and things that I don't. And that's just speaking of my preferences. Obviously, Gary Hoover, who built it, he was, I don't think he'd started doing any operating sessions when I reached out to him, but it was his intention to before he ended up moving. All right. Departing Abingdon. And one of those shortcomings, depending on, maybe you would care, maybe you would not, is in real life, obviously, the Virginia Creeper, the Abingdon branch diverted from the N&W Radford, Maine at Abingdon, and it went on its merry way. Here, if you're making your station stop, the only way in which you could do that is if you backed your train all the way out of staging, then backed it down the main, and then pulled forward. You don't have that direct connection. Or you do what we're doing now, which is you're coming through Blue Ridge, which is not geographically correct. Do I care? Not that much. I'm not a stickler for having the accurate geography, but if you were, that would be something to consider. But since we're here anyway, we might as well make a stop. And that's what we're going to do. Ethan Vogel, you've got a Sunset 382. Lucky man. It's a model that I would love to have, but then I go and do what with? I realized that the likelihood is when I actually have room to build a train layout, I'm not just going to build one big one. I'm going to build 20 separate small layouts because I just can't make up my mind. I like too many different things. It's just part of why I love being able to do the train simming thing. Uh, NW611J, your model of the layout, Nick. Do what you want, man. I feel some people get caught up in the little details, which is fine. All the power to them. Exactly. If it's things that would bother you, then you can build it differently. And obviously, in the sim, you can build and modify it however you want. So you could take the plan. I could have taken this plan and made it 5 times larger while keeping the same track arrangement if I'd really wanted to. Another thing that I like about being able to do these layouts in the sim is when you're talking about having peninsulas or areas of the layout that don't physically touch, and being able to see what that looks like in a 3D space. So we can actually see here. Now, in real life, this is a little closer to the track, but it gives you a sense of how much your walkway space you're actually giving yourself versus how much foreground scenery. And being able to space that kind of thing out, it can be very valuable. Ethan Vogel, it's one of those once-in-a-lifetime finds. There is a rumor floating around that BLI has an M on their radar. Well, I hope that rumor is true. I kind of don't from the standpoint that my wallet would prefer it's not true. But I would be hard-pressed to say no to that. I'd be, yeah, hard-pressed to say no to that. I feel like I would find a way to justify that in my own mind. That, yes, somehow I need an N. I feel like ultimately, when I do have enough space for a layout, what I'm going to end up creating is kind of a generic branch so that when I want to run Canadian Pacific, it feels right. When I want to run Norfolk and Western, it feels right. And just kind of be able to switch that out. I'm fairly confident that most of my modeling is not going to be trying to replicate a specific location. Partially to relieve the perfectionist tendencies, but also just to give myself flexibility. So if I want to run, if I want to run different things, that I have the means to do so, and I'm not locked into a particular region. Era, maybe, but even there, if you've got a field, if you've got a single track line going through a field, it could be any era if you don't have tractors or things that are going to pinhole it to a specific age. Harley, good seeing you again. I'm glad that you could tune in. Mike, you definitely did it an M. Everybody does. Yeah. Y'all gonna push me over the edge if this BLI rumor is true. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. All right, so going down the branch, we're gonna do the close-up thing, and then going back, we'll appreciate it from more of a normal modeling viewpoint. Hello, Iron Horse. Glad you could join us. So this is the cell phone territory. Actually, you know what I want to do for this? Because I really want to make this atmospheric. We're going to turn on the fog machine in here, ladies and gentlemen. And to do that, we are going to set it for early morning, and we are going to make that fog go a boom. Now... Yes, James, we're still alive. As Eddie Vedder would say, I'm still alive. Okay, we're gonna stop for our to fill up on water. This tank isn't animated, but I like the model enough that that wasn't really a deal breaker for me. Yeah, I could definitely see getting this in HO. Because, yes, this KNL model is perfect. It's beautiful. You've got all the different variations. You've got high headlight, middle headlight, high headlight for the win. Looking forward to when Strasbourg moves theirs back. But Nothing beats being able to touch the model and feel it and see it running in front of you. That still beats all, honestly. Okay. Now let's go for the view. And if I had to pick my favorite image, my favorite Winston Link image, this this one is probably it. And once you see it, you'll know it. Look familiar? Oops. I feel bad about that. Let's rewind that. I totally killed the mood with that. Okay. Rewinding the tape. Playing it forward. Okay, take 2 of that. There we go. That's the proper way to do it. Yes, that is, of course, trying to replicate Maud bows to the Virginia Creeper, which is one of Link's famous images with the horse with the sleigh bowing at just the right time. Of course, in the train set, we could make the horse stay in a bowing pose, just like we can in model railroading. This scene is so... I'm a branch line kind of guy. I love branch lines. So Link's Abingdon work is my favorite of his body of work. And this scene in particular, there's so much of a vibe around it. That's a good question for you guys. While we're enjoying our trip down the branch, what is your favorite Winston Lake photo? Love to see your responses on that. And feel free to leave a comment even if you're not watching live on that one. Okay, let's get underway again. And we'll stick our head out the window for a little bit on this one, as we appreciate the view of the trestle. Vianelli boxcar honoring my Pennsylvania heritage. That's why. Hound of Husk, we're coming up to Nella. Nella was the railroad name for the town, but its actual town name was Husk. So getting that nice Moody ride through the trees. And we'll be coming up on Nella in just a moment. Oh yes, shout out Ethan Vogel. The recordings are definitely awesome. Okay, making our second station stop at Nella. And you may go, well, Nick, why do you have the fog turned on? You can't do that with an actual layout. Well, I mean, you could have a fog machine. But if you look at Gary's photos, part of how he prided the layout, when you look at the model railroader photos, is that he was very big into photo manipulation. So he'd add fog. He'd make it look like nighttime. So even though it's not something you could actually do with a real layout, like you can't do rain, keep it in mind that if part of your goal, and Gary's goal was definitely to be taking photos of the scenes and replicating these scenes, if part of your goal is the art of the photography of the layout itself, then sure, then you could do these kinds of things in the sim, and they can give you a sense of what you might end up photoshopping after the fact you take your photos. Swimming pool, very good. Christmas at 7 Mile Ford. Christmas Eve at Rural Retreat. That's a classic. The Connie crossing the wooden trestle going the opposite way. You're thinking of the Mastodons, because by that era, the NW didn't have consolidations. I think I know the one you're talking about. I like that one too. That's also from the Abingdon Branch. Iron Horse, you purchased 19 and wondered if I could give you some pointers. Well, stay tuned. Hopefully you get to learn some things along the way. This week we're not building anything in the sim, but next month we'll be back to building a train layout, and then hopefully you learn something by way of that. Last up, our station stop here in West Jefferson. Then we're going to turn off the fog machine, and we'll take the drive back as from the normal perspective. Since moving to Virginia, I've definitely developed a much greater respect for the Norfolk and Western. And that's large part credit to Link's photography. But honestly, I just, as I've kind of come to, I've seen the A at the Museum of Transportation. I've seen 611 at Strasburg and the North Carolina Transportation Museum. I've not yet seen the only surviving Y at the museum in St. Louis, but hopefully some point I will get to do so. Okay, so we're going to turn down the fog to here. And then we're going to turn up the clock to here. So we... yeah, like this. Okay, back to gameplay. Okay, so we've made our station stop. Now we're gonna... Now this switching is a heck of a lot easier, and I kind of like that. I got all the complicated switching out of the way on Mountenay. Now we're gonna do the easy stuff, which is we're gonna run around the train. Now the only thing is I do need to put that hopper on the... I do need to put the hopper on the correct side. So do I want to do that first? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Or gondola. Man, I can't name my cars right to save my life. Y'all gotta keep me honest. Okay. So this needs to go on the other side of these cars. Which means either I need to run around it now. Actually, I don't have to run around it. Because I could just... Well, no. Yep. I'm doing what I want to do. Okay, cool. Glad I agree with myself to a point. Yeah, I agree with you. I wish there were more of these in HO. Because, I mean, honestly, the lack of branch line engines in HO is kind of amazing. I mean, you have some standard things like Bachmann's consolidations, but there's so many engines that don't get represented in HO, and like the 060 that we were doing earlier. Again, Bachmann has sort of the generic one, but you would think that there'd be more of a market for doing... I mean, I get that this is really specialty, but on the other hand, it's the Strasburg engine. You would think that they'd sell enough of them just on the power of that alone. But, yeah, I find that interesting. What does and doesn't get made. I mean, it's crazy to me that for the longest time, the only company that made 44-ton switch engines, as in the GE 44-tonners, was Bachmann. And they only had the Phase 4 one, which has the grills on the end, which if you're a Fonda, Johnstown, and Gloversville fan like me who needs the door on the end with the grills on the side, you either had to get brass or you had to 3D print it. Now Rapido's finally come out and they're doing this huge run, but you would have thought that that would have been a thing sooner. Go figure. Iron Horse, you're going to Missouri. You're going to the museum. Well, have fun. Have fun, take photos. It's very interesting to me to see what does and doesn't end up being made when it comes to different scales and different models. We all have our list of, oh, wouldn't it be nice if insert locomotive here was created. Okay, we're going to put the hopper on the other end. Yep, because that's what I need to do. So we're going to put it on the other... There, gondola. We're going to put the gondola on the other end of the train. Then we're going to use the Y to turn around. And then we just have to shove the boxcar into the siding, and we are good. Simple switching. But sometimes this is nice. Like, I could see building a 4x8 and be really happy with a 4x8 like this. Yes, there's not a lot of complexity in the operation, but sometimes less is more. And sometimes, especially for me, I like layouts that have some sense of in between, that have at least a little bit of a gap so that you get that sense that you traveled from one place to another and you don't have your train sprawled between 3 different towns. Again, everybody has their preference, and nothing wrong if you want to pack in as much as possible. But I like something like this where it's all spaced out. So, curious what you guys think as far as how you're enjoying tonight's stream. So usually, we're building the layouts live. But looking for feedback. Again, you can leave a comment even if you're not watching this live. What do you think of this? Do you like just playing with the layouts some? Or... because obviously there's other layouts that we could go back to that we could play more with. Things like Commonwealth. Oh, wrong switch. Commonwealth or Kootenai Lake Navigation Company. There's some layouts which I haven't publicly released yet that might make their appearance in a similar live stream to this where we just fire it up and we play with it. But I'd love to, or even maybe... playing with other people's trains layouts, because there are other layouts out there, and we could see going that way too. But let me know what you enjoy. So if you're liking this, hey, we're just playing along and having a good time without the building element, totally willing to consider doing some of that going forward. Ethan Vogel. One layout I liked was Model Railroad's Virginian Project layout. Well, Ethan, have I got good news for you. You're going to be happy because I'm actually building that layout as we speak. And I do mean not obviously right as we speak this moment, but I've been working on it the past few days. So I've all the tracks in place. I've placed most of the buildings, so I'm just going about the process of making the scenery. That is because what made me think of it? Well, I did recently pick up the Virginian Railway book by H. Reed, which is a fascinating read. I'm really enjoying that book a lot. But so that was part of it. And I just kept thinking, I forget what triggered it for me, but I finally said, I want this layout. And I looked online, and what's cool about it, it's going to have a working car scale, just like the project layout does. And it's also going to, and it's going to be a one-to-one recreation of their layout. And Model Railroader also posted the documents that they use for the mines and so forth. So that one, I'm not live streaming it only because it's been done. You can see that the layout exists and it worked. But that will definitely be a future play session. We'll fire that one up once that's done. So yes, you can look forward to the Virginian layout in the not too distant future. That's That's going to be a fun one. Okay. So we're grab our switch through here. So I'm glad you brought that up because I'm building that one. And it is fun. I'm really enjoying that as a build. That is a really... David Pop did a nice job on that design. And there's ways that I'm thinking that I could even see adapting it for other uses. But just building the base and figuring out what I like about playing it. Because there too, like they did a great job of documenting the layout and talking about all of the different elements to constructing it, and I give them credit for that because man, it makes it tempting to build my own version of that. Maybe even just build it as it is. I like clean cut things, but you know, they came up with an operating scheme, but you never actually see them playing with it as far as talking about the play value of it and talking about does it hold up to sort of repeat play. And that's a big reason why I'm a big believer in doing the trains layout thing. Because if you're going to spend thousands of dollars to build something, and buy the correct models and do the scratch building, you kind of want to know that it's going to keep your interest. If you lose interest in the sim, are you going to lose interest in it when it comes time to actually building it and playing with it? Unless you don't care. Unless building it is kind of the fun of it. You do you. Let's see. Ron Paladin, for build layouts, I think small layouts are best. Agreed. That is my philosophy going forward. If a layout's going to take more than 2 sessions or 2 live streams to build, I'm not going to live stream it. So that's roughly 4x8s or something of a near equivalency. It partially depends on how complex it is, because obviously if we do an urban layout, that's going to be a lot more involved than something rural. I'm also trying to limit the live streams to where I'm building a track plan that hasn't necessarily been done before. I want to be able to discover whether it works rather than replicating a pre-existing layout, which is why I'm not live streaming the Virginian build. So I agree with you on that point, Ron and John. Joey the Cat, hoping for a chain Strasbourg week. Well, there's a buddy of mine named Rob Del Prado is making... Hang on, I gotta get a view of that. That's just too good a view right here. Even though it's not really possible without a cell phone. So my buddy Rob Del Prado is building Strasbourg for 19, and he says he's close to done on it. So I look forward to seeing that complete. Once he's finished that, I am planning on building a Strasbourg Railroad trains layout. I've already designed it, so I know what the track plan's going to be, but I'm waiting on him to finish his layout so that I can use his 3D structures in my recreation of the layout. So that is something. So yes, hopefully sometime this year I'll get to do a Strasbourg Railroad build, because I think tourist railroads often don't get modeled as train layouts. Now, in the case of Strasbourg Railroad, there is actually a really nice train layout that's been done as a club layout, and I've never seen it in person. I've seen a lot of videos of it on YouTube. I hope to see it someday. But in terms of if you were going to do it in your basement, then that is something that hopefully gives you some ideas. I've even tried to think of how to do it at a really small scale, and I haven't succeeded on that front. Strasbourg, despite the fact that it's not a big route, it lends itself to a bigger layout, and you'll see when we build it. Fired Up Trade Strasbourg. I have not driven it. I've heard mixed things about it. I'm pretty sure this one that's coming out by Rob is going to be freeware too, so things to keep in mind. Okay, now this one we did the close-ups going out, so now we're gonna have the helicopter view going back. And so here we are, and let's see, we've been doing this for 30 minutes. This specific run for about 30 minutes already. I mean, it's not that involved in switching, but because of the station stops and the distance, it takes a longer time, and you don't necessarily need a lot of space to do a lot. Making our station stop here at Nella. Oh, there's a view for you right here. Do a quick station stop there before we reposition. Get a nice view of the trestles. We come this way. Disneyland Railroad. Yeah, I could see doing that for... I could see doing that. I think... For me, Disneyland Railroad, they always keep the trains together, so you just don't have any switching. Like, even Greenfield Village, when they're done for the day, they'll park the cars separately from the locomotives, so there's at least a little bit more involved there. But if all you want is maybe to take your train out of siding, that's it, then yeah, something like Disneyland could be perfect. Or your own amusement park. Yes, and lots of animatronic animation opportunities with that. Will I do a coal run up to the mines after this? Yes. That was the second highest voted one, and we could do that next. And now getting in position for our stop at Green Cove. James Cooling. Nick, is there a chance of any more Ian Rice layouts this year to be built in Train Z? I've been reading through Fine Scout Small Spaces. Yes. I have a very specific plan in mind that I want to do next. I don't have that book. If I pick up that book, then that's also a possibility, for sure. But, yeah, Ian, and you know, Lolita and Mad River was so much fun. I enjoyed that build a lot. It still needs some finishing details before it gets released, so that's probably a couple of months out before release. But yes, there's one in particular, a track plan where I look at it and go, I could see building this for my actual layout. It's branch line centric, not a huge space. So yeah, Ian is a true master. So might pull some things from his book. Also recently picked up 45 track plans by Bernard Kempinski, which is a Kalmbach book. It's out of print, but I found it at a hobby shop. And there are some really creative ideas and plans in that. So I could see pulling some from that. All sorts of different eras. I'm really becoming a track plan junkie. I mean, if you say, Nick, I've got the book, or like I've got 102 track plans, 45 track plans. I was at a thrift store and I was able to buy 9 copies of Great Model Railroads from 1991 to 1998 plus 2007. So yes, I am really liking my track plans. I have a Google Doc with well over 100 different ideas in it. And of course, if you'd like to have your train layout designed and worked on as part of Great Train Layouts Live, then I encourage you to contact me, greattrainlayouts.com. I'm happy to take on commission work, and I'd love to work with you to help you figure out a track plan, or if you have your track plan and you want to just see how it's going to look and how it's going to play, let me know. I'd be more than happy to work with you on that. So, Here we've kind of got this view. So now we're going to head back to Abingdon. We're going to make our station stop there. And then we're going to pick up the... So, okay, so we're doing coal run. Let's see. I think we could probably do both the coal drag and the mine run. We'll try to make that a thing. Ethan Vogel, Cass Scenic Railroad Track. Yeah, Cass would be fun. I actually think the 45 track plans book has a Cass track plan. So we might do something Cass related. I was also considering doing the Western Maryland Chaffee branch, aka where the Western Maryland 6, the big shay that Cass has, where it ran in its working life hauling coal. So that's one that I've considered doing. I mean, so many track plans, so little time, right? Do you also offer any help in convincing the significant other that your track plan is a good idea? That's my current obstacle. Sure. I'll give it a shot. Maybe my wife, I could bring my wife into the conversation and she could talk to your significant other and see what seems reasonable, because then it's a matter of perspective. That it's not just another train guy convincing your significant other that you should build the layout. It's you get the significant other's perspective. I'm up for taking that as an unusual form of commission work. Something else you discover when you're playing, you're working with a train layout in Train Z, and you're playing it, is you kind of find what is your attention span. So you might just like switching and being in one place, and that's great. But maybe you like running point to point. Then the question becomes, how long of a run do you need to feel satisfied? Are you okay with just 1 minute you're in one town and the next minute you're in another town? Do you need more like 3 minutes? Because that's worth taking into consideration, is how long do you feel, especially if you're doing a local or an expression, how long do you need to run to feel like you've accomplished something? It's not always a question of space. Sometimes it's a matter of having a loop and having a blank area in a loop. So you loop through that area multiple times before you arrive at your destination. So many different operating schemes out there. Frame rate 24. She asked how expensive it was going to be to play with trades. I could only respond with yes. Yeah, but no. I mean, it really depends on what you end up doing. Can it be? Of course it can be. But there's ways to budget accordingly. Besides, if you want to convince her that say that it is going to be expensive, it's really helping your cause. You gotta be reasonable, man. You got to be reasonable. You got to say, no. I like, here is a reasonable amount. Like, yeah, if you're going to model the N&W and buy yourself a bunch of BLI N&W power, then okay. Then yes, you're going to have an expensive day. But not necessarily. I mean, if you're modeling, if you're really focused on this is what I want to do, you don't need to drop a lot of money on that. And here's the thing about spending money on the hobby. Like, there's so many memes and there's so many jokes and comics about, usually about my wife. Like, that's the really, it's the really boomer thing. I see the comics about, my wife and buying trades and and my reality, when it comes to model railroading, is if I'm spending too much on it, I'm probably going to know I'm spending too much. And I'm probably going to check myself and feel guilty before anything. But I do feel, in all sincerity, it's just a matter of having open communication. So if you want to get a big, expensive, O-scale, $1,000 steam locomotive, if you can afford it, fine. But like, just talk about it with your partner and be reasonable about it. Because I think that I think that it's important to let your partner in on that conversation. It's not that you have to tell them every time you go and buy woodland scenic supplies, but I do think that it's important to be open and honest, because then they're gonna. You're building. It's another layer of trust in your relationship, and not that you're coming to me for marriage counseling or anything of the sort. You've come to a different, an interesting part of the episode, but it's something I feel strongly about because I just feel like the strength of it is that if you build them into it, especially if it's like, hey, let's work on a house together, because my wife and I worked on an HO scale house, and she picked out the color. Like then it becomes collaborative. Then it doesn't just become a a my thing and her thing. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's largely my thing. Some partners get into it, some don't, and that's totally fine. And I respect, that that my wife probably I inundate her a lot, and I try to be very mindful of how much I inundate her, especially since my day job as owner of Streamliner Media is creating video content, and a lot of that content is for railroad entities. So she hears it from all sides of my life. So I try to be patient. But yeah, my underlying thing is, look, be honest, and be honest with yourself. Know if you're spending in your limits. And if you are, then talk about that with your partner, because they'll probably be okay with it, and they'll appreciate that you're being honest about it. So that's my my advice on that particular front, because even where she gets tired of it, if I'm doing things on the layout, I can point and be like, hey, look, I put ballast down. Like, it's nice to be able to share that with her, uh and be able to let her into that part of who I am and what I do. um Uh, John, finally somebody said it. I think there's too many jokes regarding about. Yes. Oh, I get so sick of them. I get so sick of them. Okay, we're gonna send this guy back via the AI. We're gonna route him to. Let's see. I'm gonna take this. Well, I'm gonna take the mine run out, but I'm also worried that they're gonna go to the wrong place. Let's take them to 4 East. That appears to be clear at the moment. So, oops. Yeah, 4 East is clear. So we're going to go back to our train and tell him to go to. And we could pick up these cars, but I designed that for local, and y'all are wanting a mine run, and I hear you. Drive to staging for E. Okay, so who's this guy? Currently selected driver. So currently selected driver is going to take us back to. This train back to staging so we can get underway. So we're going to take first up, we're going to take a empty hopper drag with us so that we have some empty hoppers to take up to the mine. Seems logical. Now, this is not a K&L locomotive. This is an Orin locomotive. However, I did put the K&L tenders behind it because I like them better. I did also do some updates to the numbers to make them match more cleanly with the K&L colors. Thanks for joining us, NPK765. Mike, if you want a live scale Y6B to ride on, you're probably building that, and that is beyond my scope of knowledge. I wish you the best of luck with that construction. Okay, so this empty mine train is going to go along the main as we've set it. Actually, no, we don't want to cross over because we need to be able to go into... we need to be able to go into this track here for dropping off our empties. We are going to drop off 10 because that is the most that we can handle while switching this out, if memory serves me correctly. I have a feeling I could overdo it, but I think we can handle 10 hoppers. So we're going to go with 10 hoppers. If I live to regret this decision, now you have record of it. Ron, operating a long run in a sim can be tedious. You would think it'd be fun to drive a train over Sherman Hill, but by the time you get to Laramie, you feel like you should have been paid. Yeah, I did. So I was cab riding on a short line railroad, and I was telling the crew about Run 8, which is the modern railroad simulator, has multiplayer, CTC panels, all that kind of stuff. I was telling them about it. One of the guys says, "Wouldn't you just want to get paid at that stage of things?" And it's like, yeah, except I kind of would not want to this to be my life. The ability to walk away is important. I love this view. This is a nice view as well. So yes, I used to really love long runs. Like 10 years ago when I was simming, I would do end to end 3 hours, no problem. That was my thing. But part of why I got into building these model layouts is because I found myself wanting the shorter runs. I wanted to find myself enjoying, hey, I could just drive a coal drag for 10 minutes and feel like I got the experience and I'm good. And that does it more for me these days. Let me make sure my... Look. Okay, yes, it is going to the right place. Good. Sometimes you got to check the AI. They can do some crazy things once in a while. Here's me wishing I had space for a layout that could handle 10 car trains. Maybe I do need trains. I don't know if you need it, but I do think that it certainly gives you perspective on model railroading. Gives you different ideas of what you could do. So here, let's talk about, okay, some of the operational challenges this layout presents. And why you could kind of, when you're playing with it, you could kind of tell that the emphasis was on photography. So one that we passed by here is Lambert's Point. This yard, is really too small to have a great deal of function. Because you've only got 4 tracks. I mean, you've got this, but it's a stub track. You don't have any yard leads. I would throw a yard lead off of here somehow to be able to drill cars. So you'd have to switch them from that side, which you could do. But it just doesn't feel... It feels clunky in terms of working it. Because I've tried to work it, like in terms of dropping off loaded hoppers or picking up empties. But it's not really geared for operating like a yard. Also, for getting passenger trains, so if you're getting a which we might do a bit later at the end of the stream, if we're getting a passenger locomotive out, we got to take them all the way either through the yard, around the roundhouse, and then around this loop to get them to Norfolk Terminal, or we got to take them all the way down to Forest and then all the way across the bridges. It's really... I feel like there needs to be a connecting track here, and there isn't. And there can't be, kind of because of how the... I mean, if you custom laid it, you could. It's clunky. I wish it was a little bit more fluid in that regard. Now let's talk about the mine run and what we have going on here. So we're going to cut off 10 cars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, actually, I'm realizing I don't have a caboose, but I'll just generate one of those magically. So here's what we got going on for the mine run, right? So we don't really have a good place to interchange these cars. So we could stick them over here, but there's no switch in between the switches right over here and this switch all the way over here. So there's a long runaround we're going to have to do to get the locomotive on the right side of the train. Then we're going to have to bring it into the yard and then push it out. This yard in particular, like the real Auville yard, is designed for handling cars and trains. This one you could stage cars for appearance's sake, but in terms of actually running it, it just doesn't lend itself to being operated like a yard. And again, you've got no drill track, so you're going to bring trains out onto the main line. It's clunky. There's a lot of things operationally about this layout. And again, to be clear, I'm not dissing the design. I'm not dissing Gary Hoover's work. For what he wanted to do, I think it's really great. And I still think that this is an amazing layout based on the photographs that I've seen of it. I'm speaking solely from an operations standpoint. These are things where, and for me, if I'm designing a layout, if there's sidings, there's an operational function to them. So even if it's small, that's what I'm mindful of. But I certainly understand this. I don't know that I would change it. Like, even though I could change it in an infinite number of ways in the sim, I appreciate what it is. And obviously, you can work with it. It's just recognizing that, okay, we just brought this mine run in, and we have to tie up a full main. Now, yes, we could run trains around it, because we do have this control point right here, but it is still tying up a main. It's clunky. So we're going to bring the cars over here. Well, does it really matter? I don't actually think it matters too much where we bring them, because we're going to still have to run around the whole train. So actually, on that front, instead, I'm gonna leave the cars here, because we're gonna have to run around the long distance anyway with the power. So we've got our 10 cars ready. Let's see what else you guys have been saying. Real Auville yard separate for the service area. Yeah, that makes sense. In the viewer, you are showing right now the yard freight cars would get at your caboose. Makes sense. I found that having a sim reveals operational flaws that would be expensive or impossible to fix on a model railroad. Yeah, and that's the benefit of playtesting. If I was going to build a layout this big, I would be building it in the sim, and I would be playing it over and over and over, because this, I think this layout took him something like, well, so interesting history of the real layout. When he first built the layout, he actually modeled it on the Santa Fe. I think it was sort of a Cajon Pass type of thing. But then at some point he changed his mind, and so he stripped the scenery of it, but he kept the bench work largely the same. He added the mine branch. Because Model Railroader actually covered the Santa Fe version of it. So yeah, it was about 6 years along, and I'd say about 95% done when he finally pulled the plug on it. Okay, so we'll get this coupled back up to its cars. Then, in the interest of time, we're going to have the AI take it back into staging. Because we could see more of the main line, but I want to make sure we get the mine run in, and I know some of you guys were... It feels sacrilegious not to run 611, so let's see what we can do. Okay, so we're going to route this one. We need to get it... We need to give it the right kind of waypoints, or it's going to get lost. So we're going to tell it to go to Merrimack, then Blue Ridge Main 1 West, and then staging 2 East. Let's see if I can remember everything that I just said. Okay, so this engine here, yes, you are going to drive from here to Merrimack. Because if I just told it stage 8, it would very likely get confused, and then I'd have to spend time fishing it out. So Merrimack, then Blue Ridge Main 1 West, and then staging to east. There we go. So, while that does its thing, we are going to spawn in a caboose. And yes, it's a Reading caboose, but the N&W ones I have are not super nice. So, sorry. Leased caboose. So while that one gets out of town, we're going to pull our power out, which is in the shops here right now. So this kind of gives you... So you could use the AI in trains to sort of replicate mainline stuff, especially if you want to work a local and you could have the AI just doing loops over and over. That's a great way of doing things. Oh, I have the crappy tender on this. I want the nice tender. I'm going to replace my tender. You could have the AI doing things. The thing with the AI in Trainsy, for those who are unfamiliar, it needs a lot of hand-holding. It makes mistakes. It gets confused. So that's why I had to give it all those very specific directions of what to do. In fact, even now I'm worried that it's... Oh, no, it knows to crossover. But that said, if you were modeling a layout where you might want to have a train that's looping in circles on DCC and you as the player train, quote-unquote, dipping it out of the sidings, this game is good at handling that kind of thing. Why is this stopped? It should not be stopped. Why are you stopped? Your switches are clear. Things like that make me question the AI logic. I think it had to stop to get the switches right. It does weird things. Okay, let's get back to this mine run. So we're gonna get ourselves onto the main line. But it's kind of cool to see trains doing their thing in the background. And certainly for what we're doing, since the mine is completely isolated, and this is also true for the Abingdon Branch, it'd be easy enough to have a train just doing loops on the main line. And that could be a sort of nice background distraction while we're doing our thing. The mine, we're going to be going into a separate room, so we can't really appreciate it in here. You could have grabbed the engine under the coaling tower and tacked it onto the rear of the train rather than do a run around with the front engine. True. I just like running with the firebox lower. Yay, protecting the crown sheet going up to the mine. Because yes, that would have been quicker. But you know what else is quick? When we fast forward. Mike, I know this video is long, but it's tremendously enjoyable. Thanks for showing it off and accommodating requests. My pleasure. I'm glad you guys enjoy this. And that's, you know, that's the fun of it for me is being able to share this with you. Because it's nice to have the company. It's nice to feel like I'm talking to myself for a reason. And to hear your thoughts and input. Really love having you guys tune in every occasional Thursday. I try to keep it consistent to Thursdays. I wish I could have the consistency of it's the second Thursday or the third Thursday of the month, but I'm not at that point in my life right now. Unfortunately, I can't commit to a specific Thursday. Ordinarily, this would be occupied by another monthly occurrence in my life, but that got moved to next week. So now I'm doing it this week. So hopefully sometime this year I'll have actually a regular Thursday that I can run. But just stay following me on social media, subscribe on YouTube. I try to always make sure to get a post out the day of saying, hey, this Thursday we're going to be live streaming and encourage you to tune in. But of course, if you're watching this after the fact, hopefully you're having fun and still picking up on things after the fact. But it's fun to have your input and your perspective and enjoying you being along for the ride. So if I'm entertaining you deliberately or accidentally, then I'm doing something right as I see it. Okay, so here we are back, and so you can see what I mean by that huge long run around move that ties up the whole main, and now you're crossing over to the movie theater scene. Like it's say it with me, clunky. And maybe, again, to what we talked about earlier, maybe you want clunky. Maybe that's something you actually would like to have because you want operations to be more complicated. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that as an approach, if that is what you want. All depends on what you're looking for. But it's building this and having the awareness that when it comes to your operations, this is something that you have to account for, is these longer, more complex moves to get from one place to another. Another thing that I'll point out while we're on this section of the layout is of what I'm not a fan of. And it's something that I don't have a good answer to as far as how I would improve it. Let's look at this main line before we go up to the mine. This will only take a minute. So this main line, the staging comes out from behind the roundhouse, and this is essentially the start of the main line. So we come down the main line. Let's say we're running on the right-hand side. And we'll see this with 611, so I won't dwell on this too long. We run around the right-hand side. That's true all the way through Blue Ridge. Now we get to Abingdon. We have one of two choices. We either follow where the empty coal drag's going. We go into staging and we keep the same direction. But this is, I don't like how the train just disappears. It's not a satisfying conclusion. I don't feel like I've arrived at a destination when it's kind of gone off on a side track and just disappeared. I'm not a fan of the way it sort of vanishes or just magically appears in the middle of the run. Your other option, of course, is to stay on the main, but then you're going back through most of these seeds that you've just traveled through all the way back until you either, maybe you go back to Norfolk or you go around the roundhouse or Lambert's Point back into staging. But I'm not, I don't know how I feel about that. It's not something that I can point at and say, here's the obvious way to work around that with the same restrictions of size. But I just don't know how we'd feel about that. All right, let's go to the mine. Frame rate. Yeah, this layout makes me want to implement motion cameras to take photos automatically along the layout. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what the trackside camera in Trainsy is like. Have I been tempted to buy one of these from Broadway Limited? Yes, but there is a track plan I want to build. It's by Dan Burke of Appalachian Railroad Modeling. And it is actually a really good plan for how you would accommodate an engine like this in a small space. So maybe sometime that's something we'll do on the show, because it'd be an easy one-stream build, and that could be fun. But, you know, if I built a layout for every idea I had, well, that's why I do it digitally. It's so difficult to say that I like this idea enough that I'm actually going to have the physical model for it. Except if it's Canadian. Especially Canadian Pacific. That makes it easier. So, as we mentioned earlier, for those who weren't here, ordinarily, for the real physical layout, when this was a real physical layout, this section didn't go into a separate room. This staging was underneath this portion of the layout. This incline would have worked its way along the back here, and then eventually the second level split from the first level. So this is representing, I want to say, Delorme Mine, but honestly, it could be just about any mine served by the N&W. This is another classic link seed of train coming out of the tunnel that we could take in here. That makes me happy. Hopefully it makes you happy too. I think that, you know, in terms of what Gary was looking to do, in capturing the flavor of old Winston Link photos, his design really opened up the possibilities for him, and he made the most of it. I look forward to see what he does with his new layout. And there's really good element. Like, I love this bit here where it's in between running. I love, especially for a longer train, such as this mine run we have here. We're going to come into this town here. Mike, you're turning on browser notifications for every channel. Oh, thank you. I take that as a compliment. I appreciate that. And I appreciate those of you who try to tune into my Crazy Thursday schedules to be part of these, because it's so much fun. I really like having you along for the ride. You're such a lovely audience. I'd like to take you home with me, except you're taking me home with you, of a sort. This is one of my favorite scenes. It's not really a Link photo, but I just love towns with company houses. Company towns with company houses. This is a really nice little scene. And not a lot of footprint needed for this. Definitely something you could easily replicate. Okay, enough of my jibber jabber. What are we going to actually do here? Well, we're going to load up these hoppers with some coal. We need to be able to get around our current hoppers. We need to be able to run around the caboose. Let's see how this goes. It's been a while since I've done this run, so there's a good chance I could mess things up. But I'm really wanting to run the J and not keep you guys up late, so let's see how we do. So I think I can actually fit 10 cars in a single track. In which case I should be, I think that's why I set 10 as the limit, because I should be able to get the full train in here, which will put my caboose at the end, and then I can push these cars out. Yeah, something like that, he says, hopefully. In we come. But yeah, there's, I've got some good plans coming up in the future that I'm looking forward to building alongside with you guys. Want to get back to modern railroading. I'm hoping to do that next month. I've got a plan in mind for that. There's an East Broadtop plan. Well, I want to do something East Broadtop. I had a plan, and I still like what that one is. I'm going to tweak it a bit, though, to feel like let's cover the East Broadtop as best we can on a bunch of different fronts. So we will stop these cars just so that we could clear the switch, which we can now do. We'll make sure we can kind of sort of clear that caboose. So that first hopper, actually, it's probably going to load up my tender. Oh, well. Okay, so now we can run around. Oh, we can't because the radius is set wrong. So I'm going to briefly hop into the sim and change the switch radius. Annoying thing that I've learned I have to do, but it does fix issues like that. Sometimes. There we are. And bring it back forward. Oh, or that caboose. So now we're going to switch over to the second track. But as always, I love hearing feedback from you guys. So somebody mentioned an Ian Rice plant, doing an Ian Rice plant in the future. That's definitely on my list. What else would you like to see? Throw a comment in the chat or down below. Because I take that into account if there's something that you really care about seeing. While we are getting our loaded hoppers loaded, now is also be a good time to thank those of you who are supporting the Roundhouse and what makes this layout great and Great Train Layouts Live. Now even at the rail yard, to an extent, on Great Train on Patreon. And if you really like what we're doing here and you want to support our ability to keep doing this, then head over to patreon.com/theroundhouse. There's a link in the description. And if you're able to, even for as little as $1 a month, $5 a month, you get access to episodes of the Roundhouse early, the podcast episodes. $10 a month, access to a monthly hangout. So, patreon.com/theroundhouse if you feel you're able to support what we do. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to need to run around these cars. I'm probably going to have these cars on the wrong side of me to begin with, but let's get them loaded up while we're at it. So, you could see, even though obviously in real life, often you're just staging your loads or your empties, but in the sim we can actually load them dynamically, so why not? Although I think I went too quickly for that third hopper. So we'll slow that down a wee bit. There we go. And now forward. And I have that switch set over. Now, do I have enough room for the engine and 5 cars? I don't know if I do. I might. Because then I could just shove the whole lot of cars out there. Actually, no, I know what I want to do. I'm going to shove those 5 onto the other 5. Run around both. There we go. That is what I'm going to do. I knew there was a reason I was taking 10 cars and not more than that. I've tried it with 20. It's kind of doable, but boy, is it complicated. Do I have enough room for 5, or am I going to have to double them? Oh, we are so close with 5. We're so close. Okay, well, I guess 4 it is. But we'll do it, because it's going to make things easier in the long run. So we'll leave 2 hoppers behind, fish them through. I am going to fast forward this bit just because I do want to make sure we get to the part of the show where we play with the J. So, uncouple here. Pull forward. Clear that switch. And now we're going to back those cars up. I love the fast forward function too. It's like, I want to figure this switching puzzle out, but I also don't want to take it to take forever. So I'm going to fast forward. How's the stream been behaving tonight? Yes, or not yesterday, but last month I know that bit of issues. So if things are going smoothly from the streaming standpoint, not too many interruptions or forth, let me know. Thumbs up, something along those lines. So yes, by making this 10 cars, we've now got the ability to run around on that center track. We can move 5 of those cars to the second track, and we could grab the 10, put them on the caboose, put on the caboose in the end, and head back down to Allville. And once we get to Allville, then we'll fire up a passenger train. Smooth on your end, frame rate 24? Well, you would know. You would know if the frame rate was in fact 24. Because you know what the only thing more amusing than 24 is? 25. I'm hearing chuffing sounds. I wonder if it actually made it back. Oh, yes. Our mine empties are... I'm wondering why it took so long, but our empty mine train actually did make it back to staging, so that's encouraging. All right. Make sure the switches are lined the way we want them. Now we bring it back. I feel shame for not having known Mr. Link's work before 2021. A digital tribute is a brilliant idea. Well, I hope that this has kind of done his work justice. But again, credit for Gary for coming up with the plan as a whole. Because this is a fun layout. Even though we could see where the operational challenges are, but it is a it's a really creative little plan. I wish I could have seen it in person. I look forward to seeing his new one in person someday. That would be a lot of fun. But at least this digital version exists. And I hope that it's kind of a good way of preserving his layout. So the fact that, and it's not the first time this has happened, because the Mountain Branch, which was the first What Makes This Layout Great, that was torn down a couple years ago. So the same guy who's building the layout that we saw in the first hour of this live stream, it built the Mountain Branch, the little Reading 4x8 with the extension off of it. And I'll be honest, when he announced that that layout was disappearing, I was very tempted to buy it off of him because I thought it was beautiful. I wanted it to be saved. The problem was that where we lived, there would have been room, but just the unpredictability of if we would move again made it not ideal. So the buildings from it are safe. Obviously, the rolling stock from it's safe, but the land itself got torn down. But you can always enjoy it. That route is available on... I think I uploaded it to greattrainlayoutslive.com. But if not, it's definitely available on the download station. So I'm going to actually just leave these hoppers here in the interest of just getting our mine run back. So we'll load up these hoppers and... Wait, why did I go grab the caboose first? I meant to grab the... Whatever. Okay. Well, we got the caboose anyway, so we'll move it over to another track. That's what happens when you talk and drive, folks. So, fast forward. Okay. There we go. Now, for what we were actually going to do, which is finish loading these hoppers. So yeah, if I was doing the full thing, I would leave the empties on like 5 and 5 on a couple of the tracks. But in the interest of time, we are going to just collect our empties, or collect the loads, collect the caboose, and take off for Auville. At which point, then we'll fire up 611. Ah, see what I did there. You know what's sad? I actually did not mean to do that as a pun. That just came out. I am maybe sorry about that, maybe not. All right. Now we are grabbing our hoppers. And now we are loading our hoppers. There we are. Oh, nope, it didn't load the last 3. I was going too fast. Too impatient was he, but I have to go backwards anyway, so it's all good. Oh, son of a... I forgot to change that switch back. Nothing. You didn't see anything. It's all good. Well, I've been doing a lot of switching, so for that to be my first boo-boo of the day, my first major boo-boo of the day, I'll take it. Okay, nothing to see here as we slowly use the 5-fingered mouse crane to get everything back on the rails and okie dokie. And grabbing this. Okay. And back we go. Have I seen the damage 611 has? I didn't realize 611 had damage. Many great model railroads have been lost over the years. The demographics are harder than the happy. Absolutely true. I've been involved. Well, I should say I've been involved, but yeah, I've definitely seen layouts. And the key thing, this is true of any age. Have a plan. Have a plan with what you're going to do. And not just your layout. This I feel strongly about. Not just your layout, but all your train stuff. Because you're not going to have it forever. And you don't want to put your family in a spot of having to figure out what the heck to do with it. Because they may throw it out. They may sell it for less than its value. They may be trying to sell it for too much. So have a plan. have a plan for what you're going to do with your layout, have a plan for what to do with your trains, have contingency plans. Because especially if your partner is not super knowledgeable about trains, to be able to say, this goes here and this goes here, so that, because otherwise, you leave them with a huge responsibility to try to get rid of this stuff, presuming you don't have offspring that would already have, or somebody in your family that would have interest in it. But I think a lot of people don't, and you want to be prepared for that. So have a plan. Okay. Oh, this is one of my favorite. But I love switching when the Y is sitting here in the next to the company houses. Like, this is a space. Like this, and you figure, in terms of the operational capacity of this layout, I mean, you could fit 3 or 4 operators very easily at a single time. You've got somebody on the mine run, somebody doing the Abingdon Branch, 2 people on the main line, maybe 3 if you have somebody switching out the station. A lot can be going on at once. Okay, fast forward to the cook. So this is the tender first portion of our show. And another thing that I like about this mine operation is what we did. We did it as a single train, and with the AI, but to be able to have 2 services that do something together at one point during your operating session, that is something that doesn't require a lot of space. I mean, obviously, the more space, the more you can do. But it doesn't have to require a lot of space. So being able to have an interchange where one train brings a car and another train picks it up and does something with it. And it could just be a matter of one train brings a train in and then you have a yard crew that's switching those cars out or switches them into staging or something. Does not have to be complicated or involved, but just having something that there's that sense of this is a railroad, this is a team sport, there's interchange, there's multiple things going on at once, is worthwhile. And you don't need a ton of space to do it. You could do it in a 4x8. You could do it in a 3x6. All right. Now we can feel the weight of those loaded hoppers as we're going back to Auville Yard. And we'll fast forward to watch our train come out again. We'll do the trackside view thing. Trains doesn't have multiplayer, is that correct? Mike, that's... yes and no. Trains technically has multiplayer. So you can actually interact with other players. However, the limitation of it is that it only works for things that are on the download station. So this route would work. But if a route uses, or an activity uses anything that is not available on the download station, then no, it doesn't work. So, for example, with this layout, I mean, how would you play it without the K&L trains, A-class, and the M-class? So, yeah, you could have everybody using Ys, but then you don't have a passenger locomotive, then you don't have a branch locomotive. So it's really restrictive. I've never actually been in a multiplayer session in Train Z. So sadly, there's not really a way to make it work, which is too bad because this layout would obviously lend itself super well. And you'd think that by now they could have found a way to make that work. And I hope that someday they do, because to me, that's one of the big stumbling blocks. We're seeing this increase in games that are multiplayer compatible. Railroads Online, Run 8, why, even Open Rails, although I've struggled to get that working. Why do we not have Train Z multiplayer? N3V, why you know multiplayer? All right, last one for the night, and then we'll call it a night. We're going to run a passenger train, and we're going to have the fun of actually getting our power over there, because that feels appropriately epic. I'm going to move this guy. One of these guys needs to come out of the way. I'm going to switch him to, I think, the ash track, and that'll get him out of the way. Yeah, I'm going to tell him to couple to this car, which is 41-foot MCR1. So I'm going to switch to here and couple to 41-foot gondola MCR1. We'll see how well it does with that instruction. Meanwhile, here we go. This is also a KNL Trains model. Oh, thank you for joining, Derpy Possum. Glad that you could join us tonight. Oh, and it did actually find its way over to the right track. So good. Now we have a track to clear. Okay, I'm gonna go around the back of the roundhouse, which means I need to go tender first, so I could go nose first, so I could go tender first. Perfect. We can enjoy the turntable. Have to click it in a particular way to get it to work, and then even there you have to click it multiple times. Train Z limitation. But yeah, that's nice. That is nice. It sounds like that unit coupled up, so we're good there. I just need to make sure I didn't press it too many times. Looks like I did. There we go. All right. Now we'll back out of here. I will say it is nice having a full engine terminal. Something like this does lend itself well to being able to hustle power and so forth. So somebody could just take locomotives in, get them in and out of the roundhouse, fill them with coal and water. That's a nice job for a multiplayer session. Am I going to stop in time to be able to throw that switch? Maybe? Cool. Okay. There we are. And now, back we go. And that switch is thrown correctly. So yay for that. Joey, you prefer the Train Z turntable mechanics. To me, the one I like the best is Open Rails. Open Rails introduced turntables to Microsoft Train Simulator routes. I find it to be the easiest and the least distracting, partially because you don't have to stop at a specific node or specific track. You can stop wherever you want, and I like that control rather than having to lock into specific tracks. Okay, so we've got our 611 coming around. which means we'll need to throw this switch over here so that we are good to go. And not that you'd ever be able to appreciate this on the actual layout because it's tucked behind the roundhouse, but let's have a view of what it looks like from over on this side. This is something that congratulating myself. Oop, forgot to throw that switch. Oh, and that switch. I came out on the wrong track. Oh well. Making it through the switches even though I set them incorrectly. So Gary had all of his signals working and they were all accurate. So with this route, I tried to recreate all the signals in the right place. Sometimes they don't display the right aspect because they're using whatever pre-programmed logic they have. But that was an interesting element to this. I can't say that I would go out of my way to put signals in for future projects, but for the sake of something different. And for the sake of getting the look right. Because the signals are definitely part of what makes the route have that Norfolk and Western look and appeal. Let me make sure. Yeah, I'm on the right track because it all converges into one anyway. And now I'm going to want to make sure that I'm actually lined for the right track, which I am. That is good. The windows. It's getting cold. There we go. That's better. Old splines, Railroad's online turntable, best turntable, please no. Yeah, the Railroad's online turntable, it's good when it works properly. So now we are in Norfolk, getting connected to the power genero. And I like the fact that even though it's not a major focus, there's little nuggets of switching opportunity. You've got this freight house over here. You have some industries over here that you could switch out. I think that's a nice touch. And then, not that this actually connects to anything. This is completely isolated. But this embedded street track could make for some nice photos. Ron, when I try to add signals to my route, it breaks the AI train. Still trying to figure it all out. Yeah, AI trains and signal. I tend to avoid signals unless there's a specific reason to include them because they're usually more trouble than it's worth. And before anybody asks, I forget where I got this locomotive. It's available online as a freeware. It's kind of a kit bash of a K2A. It's a nice stand-in. But I think if you Google search Norfolk and Western Steam Train Z, should be able to find it. All right, passengers on board. Time to head out. And I do love this terminal scene. This is a really nice station scene here. Got to keep your passenger trains short if you're going to actually use it as a functioning terminal, but it's fun. Now I got to make sure that our switches are aligned correctly if we're going on the main. And I think what we're going to do is we're just going to go for a drive, and then by the time we start heading back along the main line, that'll be a good time to wrap this all up. I feel like we should do this at sunset. Let's change the time on this. Let's push it more to the... Yeah, maybe too long in the shadows. Yeah, we'll just leave it where it was. Thereabouts. And this Another good screenshot opportunity right here. I mean, this whole bridge scene, I just love it. I have to pause it to get... If only you could pause in real life to get the drivers just where you want them, eh? And one of the interesting things I find when it comes to running model trains is the scale of speed. You'll see that obviously this was designed for very high speed, but that said, even once you get up to 30 miles an hour, it feels like 60 when you're running it around those tight curves. Now, this should also look somewhat familiar to Winston Link fans. And we're going to take a screenshot of that. Now to run 6/1100. I mean, you could, but it would just feel stupidly fast, especially when it comes to the curves on a layout like this. And then coach yard switching is an often overlooked operational opportunity. It is. I've got a track plan that I want to do. And it's probably going to be in conjunction with K&L Trains again, like this stream was. Thank you to K&L Trains for sponsoring this stream. Something like that. I do have a track plan that I want to do that is very focused on terminal, or a station terminal. Because you're right. And I think part of it is because for a lot of us, we have kind of our one streamliner that we really want. I have a Rapido Canadian, for example. And once we have that, we're kind of set, as opposed to having 4 or 5 passenger trains. But there's a lot that could be done with switching coaches, switching express cars, baggage. I'd love to explore that more. Yeah. Steve did a nice job with this one. Okay, so I need to make sure I'm going the right way here. Those switches are set correctly. That one is not. And I'm gonna... I really wish at times that they didn't lock the switches. It's like, I will stop my train before then, but please let me throw that switch. Come on. Okay. Now I had to practically stop the train to get there. But in terms of, like, what is a reasonable speed to get up to, I find the 25, 30... I think I set the track speed at 20 miles an hour, because, yeah, once you get beyond that, it just feels like it's going too fast. Now I'm going to pause and make sure that all my switches are set again, because I have a feeling they might not be. Throw that. Throw that. Throw that. And throw that. Okay. We'll be good for the return trip. Mostly a freight guy. Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I think that's what... when we tend to think of what there is to do operationally, because we don't have passengers that physically get in and out of our cars, freight tends to be the thing we gravitate towards. Let's see how we're doing. So yeah, 30 miles an hour, and it already, like, as we come through Blue Ridge here in just a moment, we'll see that even that feels fast. I mean, I could take it up to maybe 40 and it won't feel too ridiculous, but... So this is, what, 33? And it's going to look really fast as it goes around that curve. Even with the super elevation and so forth. Like, that feels comfortable, but that's only 35. All right, praying I got the switches right as we go through here. Yes, and yes, I got the switches right. Go me. All right, so we are going back whence we came. And yes, I could go through the whole procedure of backing the train back into the terminal, but I think this is as good a time as any to sign off. Thank you guys for tuning in to Great Train Layouts Live. Hopefully you've enjoyed playing or watching as we play along with two routes, Mountenay and Norfolk and Western in the 50s. If you want early access to this version of Norfolk and Western in the 50s, go to patreon.com/theroundhouse. Otherwise, it'll be available on the download station in about a month, as well as greattrainlayouts.com, where you can see all sorts of other layouts. And if you want to commission me to do a live stream build like you've seen tonight, again, greattrainlayouts.com. I'd love to work with you to make your vision a digital reality. Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.